Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Big East Rewind. I am Chuck Everson, your 7-foot host from Villanova University, and my point guard, my partner, and my dentist, Sonny Sparrow, ladies and gentlemen. How are you?
I'm great, Chuck. I'm great, Chuck. We have one of your boys for sure, and we have the Bruiser. This is a fun one.
Yeah, well, actually, two of my boys, to be honest with you, because Matt and I banged heads in
Oh,
high
that's
school.
right.
There's a Long
There's the
Island guy, so
connection. I
I
know.
have
I
to go with that a
forgot. You
little bit.
guys on Long Island, you think that you're in like God's country. I get it. I get it.
Listen, it's
Upstate
a
New York.
different place, man. You're living on the island, and you get that salt air,
Yeah,
you
you
know.
get the congestion and the traffic, brother. That's
And
what you
and
got.
listen, you gotta be tough when you play out there. I'm sorry, you do. And Matt Brust and Mark Plansky joined us from Macy's Herald Square, and what a great conversation we had with those guys. And first of all, Mark and I are closer now, 40 years after we played, than when we were playing, and we were pretty close then. The whole team has been pretty close, but Mark and I probably talk 2 or 3 days a week, and always have a good time, always have a good laugh, and you could tell by the interview today that we like to rib each other a little bit. And
Oh yeah, right off the bat. Right
right
off
off
the
the
bat.
bat, man, there's not there
How
was no
about how about
no
Matt
messing
shows
around.
up? I thought we had an FBI agent in our
Yeah,
grasp.
Matt came dressed to kill, man.
Full suit. I was ready to. I was ready. Uh-oh, what did I do? Did I not submit a form or something? I
Yep,
thought I was in
yep.
trouble.
Yeah, he told both of them told great stories about Coach Massimino and Coach Carnesecca. Two of the great Italian coaches probably ever to coach out of the with the Italian
Yeah,
heresy that
two
they have.
maybe the
And
best that we've seen. Yeah.
yeah, you know what? And it was great listening to Matt because Matt was very, very close with Louis, and and Mark was close with Coach too, with Coach Mass. So it was
Okay,
really good
I'm
to
going
hear
to
the
ask
story.
you. Give me your Mount Rushmore of Big East Italian coaches. Give me your four. Give me your top four.
Well, those two, Louis and
Those
Coach
are
Mass.
givens. Those are
Those
givens.
are
Who your other
givens.
two?
I got to go PJ Carlissimo.
I got it. I got to go PJ too. Yeah.
Got to go PJ Carlissimo, right?
Yeah.
The other one, I think you got to go Ricky P. You got to go Rick Pitino.
Ooh, little recency bias, I believe. A little recency.
Well, listen, he was a good coach when he was with the Friars. They went to the Final Four.
No, no,
He made
he
Billy the Kid, Billy the Man.
yeah.
So, I mean, you got to give him his just desserts, man. I think he's who else? Who would you say? Who would be the other one?
No, you know what? It's funny funny you asked me because that was my number four pick too.
Okay, so quit breaking my balls about it. I
I
didn't know.
just got to give you a little bit something there.
Yeah. Well, listen, and I tell you what, it was so we had a great time with those two guys, and we got into everything from playing in the Big East and at the Garden in particular, and all the stuff that they've been, and they went on these Big East trips, and PJ coached them on the Big East trips, and they're a lot of fun. We've had shows about that before, Sonny, and
Yep.
I was fortunate enough to go to one of those, and I know how much fun that is. So it was great hearing from these guys. You'll enjoy this one. Mark Plansky from Villanova and Matty Brust from St. John's. Enjoy.
Sit back, buckle up, man.
Okay, we're back at Macy's Herald Square for the starter drop or the starter jackets and all the starter gear. And to now, this is going to be a lot of fun. Now we got a Johnny, our first Johnny of the day.
We do. Wait.
First
Our
Redmond.
first Redmond.
Redmond.
Thank
I
you.
have to be
Thank you.
respectful because he played in the '80s like us.
Redmond. We're all
Okay.
still Redmond.
Okay, Redmond, and
I'm still an Orangeman.
and one of my favorite teammates on the Villanova '85 team is with us today. So,
Wait. What's the name of your boat?
well, yeah, well, we'll get to that. We'll
Oh, okay. All right, okay. I'm sorry. I cut to the chase. Sorry.
Yeah, you're
My
getting
bad.
ahead of me. You're getting ahead of me, Sonny.
I'm a guard.
All right. Well,
He's a
that's
big
it.
man.
That's it. We think a lot slower than you. You know what I mean? Takes
The
a
name
long
of my
time for it
book,
to get
Sonny,
up
is
here.
More Than a 2-3 Zone.
So joining us from St. John's, this guy was one of the toughest guys probably in the league back then. And I know him from high school. He was also a tough player on Long Island.
Multi-sport athlete.
Multi-sport athlete. Could have went and played football, big-time football.
Football at
and
Notre Dame, I
chose-
think, right?
Chose to
I
play
did play
basketball.
football. Didn't you guys recognize how I played basketball?
the great Matt Brust from St. John's. How are you, Matt?
Good to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Great to see you, man.
So wait, the 94 by 50 version of football? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Well,
Right.
Big East back then.
Big
was-
East
was
basketball.
kind of
There we go.
football.
All
Yeah.
right.
And this guy is a Hall of Famer at Villanova.
I did not know that.
And he's a Hall of Fame host. He's a Hall of Fame announcer for ESPN.
That's right.
No, and one of the good ones. You know, I don't want to blow him up too much because I got to live with
Going to
him.
be hard to talk to after
It,
that.
it is my good buddy, my pal, Mark Plansky. How are you?
Sonny, you realize I may be a Hall of Famer, but I am no legend like your coworker. And he didn't ask the question, but I'm going to tell the story anyways. 2018, the last Villanova National Championship year, they play the regional final on the East in Boston. So as soon as they win, and it's regional final time, Chuck calls me up and says, I'm staying with you. I'll see you on Thursday. So we get into the garden. You got to go from one side to the other to the Wilco to pick up the tickets. And he's wearing a banner that looks like this, but Villanova
Not
cut.
quite that big, but close.
And everyone's like, Chuck, Visa up, 85, Chuck. And I'm with my daughter, who's a senior at Villanova. All the way back, Chuck, Visa up, Chuck, way to go, Chuck.
Did
picture,
anybody
Chuck.
mention your name,
Chuck.
though, while we were walking through? That's what I want to know.
Not a
'Cause
one.
we were in Boston.
Until someone said, can I take a picture? And he said, yeah. And Chuck's like, you want this guy in the photo? He's like, do you remember this guy? Yeah. My daughter's there. We're on the escalator going up to get into the garden. Chuck's on top, my daughter, then me, Matt. Chuck
My niece.
Chuck-
My niece.
looks down at Madeline and says, Madeline, let me ask you a question. Would you rather be a Hall of Famer that nobody knows or a legend like me?
And what do you think she said, Sonny?
Legend.
That's
Legend.
Right. That's right. Well, legends never die, Mark. That's what I'll tell you. So before
They only
Sonny
get
asked
more
the
famous.
question before we got started a little bit here. So Mark has a great space up at the Cape in Chatham, and every year I go visit Mark, and sometimes we bring some teammates with us, and we go out on his boat, and it's always an adventure, Sonny. I mean, last time, right, we went out about 2 miles off the cut, right, and what did we run into? Like 3 pods of humpback whales. It was like we were filming a
Bigger than the
Discovery
boat?
Channel moment, you know?
They bigger than the boat?
Oh yeah, bigger than the boat, right?
They're,
Gotta
big,
get a bigger
they're
boat.
bigger than Chuck.
Big.
They're big
That's
whales.
It's
Those are big
It's
whales.
big.
That's a big whale.
I wouldn't post any of them up, that's for sure. Okay? So they're there feeding, and 20 feet, 15 feet from us, and we're in a boat, and we've gone out numerous times on the boat. Mark's very good, with knowing what to do on the high seas. Mark, tell him what the name of your boat is, please.
The name of my boat is What's a Hoya?
What's a Hoya?
So, a little maritime, what's ahoy, and the letter A, exclamation point. So I'll be on the beach, and people be like, hey, are you from Canada? I'm like, no. Did you go to Georgetown? I'm like, you're getting closer.
Getting closer. You're in the neighborhood.
Yep. So it goes deep, and I know the Georgetown rivalry goes deep. It goes deep with the St. John's guys too.
We were talking about it pre-camera, about the Georgetown Hoya paranoia. I think it started when we started talking about the starter jackets and how that became the standard. The Georgetown standard jacket, it became culturally just across the board, and it allowed a guy like Run DMC on St. John's campus to wear a Georgetown jersey and not get mugged. Right?
Yeah, that was
right.
dangerous.
Dangerous.
That
Hard to
wasn't a
believe.
good idea.
Yeah.
But the Georgetown guys got all the material. They got anything they wanted, and we were like, "Where's our stuff?"
They had the sneakers too.
Yeah.
The gray and
did.
navy sneakers with Hoyas on the back.
We came later, so we got ours later.
That's it. That's
You
it.
had orange sneakers, so that speaks for itself.
Well, I mean, listen, but the truth be told, the rivalries, they were very, very good, especially defensively. They were tough to play. Anytime you had to go out and play the Hoyas, you knew you were in for a fight, right, guys? Talk about your experiences playing against Georgia.
It's funny, Matt and I were talking about it, when we were waiting the last 17 hours to come on here.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, the green room wasn't good.
The current team, St. John's team, plays defense very similar to the Georgetown 80s team. Georgetown 80s team just took it to a different level. They basically fouled every possession, and the mentality from Coach Thompson delivered to his team was the referees cannot call a
call
foul
'em
on
all.
every
That's
possession. So just keep going, and when we get called for a foul, I will look surprised, and I'll get 10 more calls that will not get called. And that's how they played. We practiced 7-on-5. When we practiced against the Georgetown 80s teams, Coach Massimino would put 7-on-5, and it came close to replicating the pressure.
Yeah.
It was still a better defense with 5 than we did with 7.
Right.
But that's the best
Right.
it was, right?
Right,
Yeah,
and then the back of the press, you got
Yeah.
Patrick Ewing.
Yeah, you get by Gene Smith
changer.
and those guys, and Billy and Reggie and those guys, and then okay, you got the big man back there blocking everything.
Yep.
So he erased all the mistakes. So
How about you, Matt? What was that like?
You know, it was like the boxing version of going out and facing the pressure of Mike Tyson. The ball would go up, and literally, and this only happened in my experience playing in Georgetown, with about 4 minutes left in the first half is when I caught my first breath. And for those of us who used to run so fast, because you know how fast I could really run, it was murder. They just kept coming and coming and coming. And it was brilliant how Coach Carnesecca, how we counter that. Didn't necessarily work all the time, but he would call us in a timeout. You think he would draw up some strategy or some, amazing play and he'd say, "Hey, calm down, stick the ball up your behind." And we're like, what does that exactly mean? You walk every time over the half court. We got to keep the game in the 60s. And, by halftime, it's already 40 to, 28.
Right.
But, those guys, the pressure they put on was amazing. They were in such great shape. And they weren't afraid of anybody.
And they played 10 guys typically, right? So you talk about waves. It was almost like a hockey substitution.
yeah,
But they also had 5-6 NBA players,
On every team.
talent-wise,
Right.
on
Yep.
the team. It wasn't just play hard and we'll
Right.
win with our defense. It was play hard, we're going to win with our defense, and oh, by the way, we can put up 80 if we need to.
Right.
And
A little
then
different.
Yeah,
Different
exactly.
game plan.
Yeah, they were
exactly.
unbelievable.
So let's while we got you both here, you both played for fiery Italian coaches, okay, and Rolly Massimino and of course the great Lou Carnesecca. Talk about what that was like, guys, at practice and and during the games, and how their Italian heritage may have gotten the better of them from time to
You
time.
go first, Matty. You and Coach Carnesecca were very, very close.
Maybe we should talk about PJ. Oh, well, we'll get to that.
We'll get to PJ.
Thanks. Coach Carnesecca, of course, we lost him this year. And it's still with all of us.
Yep.
And I believe that he gained more popularity after he retired. Just the absolute best mentor, coach that you could ever have. And I was very fortunate to be able to play for Dean Smith for a short period of time and got a shot with Chicago and Phil Jackson. But Coach Carnesecca, fiery is one way to describe it. Imagine a guy who's 5'3", under your chin with a fist balled up, saying, "Get back on defense, or else." And we're kind of thinking, what's or else? So he just was that passionate. And I guess by today's standards, unfortunately, but the game has changed so much. He was always up your back, always calling you out. And it wasn't so much the criticism, but he was really, really hard. But the one thing that he did, and I've tried to emulate that whenever I'm doing any coaching of any kind, is after he would beat on us, he would call you off to the side, put his arm around you, and explain himself.
Right.
And you know why I did that. You know I love you, and you're coming over for dinner tonight, right? And it's like,
But
well,
you felt that, right? That was just a visceral feeling, which I find really unique and interesting in we'll call it the Italian culture. I think not everybody gets that. Not everybody's willing to do that. But honestly, it's just you have a feeling. You played for Dean Smith for a year,
Right.
who's a legend in his own right.
Right.
And your feelings and your love for Louis is just palpable, right?
Coach Carnesecca, what do you say to the guy that saves your life, picks you up when no one else wanted you? I went down to Carolina. My brother played at Carolina, won a national championship. I'm 17. I don't know any better, and I just make a decision based on that. And coming back home, it was very, very rough. Fortunately for you guys, you didn't transfer. And in those days, it was real transfer. You had to sit out
a year.
full year, and I wanted nothing to do with basketball. I just had it, and I had to get a job. I worked at a garage, and Coach Garnaseka said, "You're going to come to school 2 days a week because I want to see your face. I want to see your face." And we go in him, he would just talk. It would virtually talk me off a ledge. And at the time, it was my mother and I. My father had moved on, and I remember my mother being so upset. And he called her in when I had first transferred, and she couldn't believe the whole situation, how it evolved and so forth. But I remember him looking at her and affectionately coming around his desk. My mother's 5'10", so it was quite the scene. Puts his arms around my mother and says, "I'm going to take care of your boy. Don't worry, he's one of my guys now." And in that moment, I never felt a bond with any man that was so great that I had with Coach. And the man virtually taught me how to be a man. He raised me. There isn't anything, he said, "Go through the wall." I do it with pleasure, Coach. And that's the effect. He wasn't necessarily a Dean Smith X's and O's guy.
Yeah.
But the one thing that man could do was he could motivate his players to get them to do what he wanted us to do. And you got to remember, we're talking St. John's now. You know, St. John's at the time was a cement block in the middle of Jamaica. So I'm coming from Chapel Hill, and there's bees and butterflies and all that stuff. And then go to St. John's, and there's bullets flying by on Jamaica Avenue. So what the heck did I do? But the love that he, Brian Mahoney, Ronnie Rutledge gave, the staff gave to the place, those three guys built a program and succeeded for 35 years in New York City.
Yeah.
And I challenge any sports franchise to make the claim, wins, losses, the success that Coach Garnaseka had.
Great stuff.
My Louis story actually is great. My younger sister Lisa went to Fordham, and she calls me up and says, "Hey, Coach Garnaseka's in the stands." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "I don't know." I said, "Go say hi." I'm not going to go say hi to Coach Garnaseka. He's a legend. Go say hi. Introduce yourself, Lisa Plansky. Coach, Lisa Plansky. Oh, hun, sit down, sit down. Let me tell you, your brother, he pissed me off. I mean, I love him. I wish he played for the Johnnies. He pissed me off.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, how was he?" And my sister Lisa says he's maybe the most genuine, kind man I've ever talked to. And he, more importantly, spent 10 minutes talking about me. Tell me about your life here at Fordham. And that's who, Coach Garnaseka was and who Coach Massimino was. Playing for Coach Massimino, I grew up in Boston. I'm one of 7 kids. My dad was my hero. And I'm playing for Daddy Mass, and I got my dad telling me, the sky is green, and I got Coach Mass telling me the obvious, the sky is blue. When I'm kind of listening to my dad, because I did it for 18 years, and Coach Mass realized that I was one of those kids like Matt that, the more he pushed, the earlier to practice I got, and the later I stayed. And it's amazing how that can be misinterpreted as favoritism when you're 18 and 19 years old.
Right.
Because Coach Garnaseka, think about the characters that you played with. He has to motivate, the Walter Berries, Willie Glasses, Matt Brust, Chris Mullen, 4 different ways. Well, same with us, right? Kenny Wilson was a point guard on our team, and if you yelled at Kenny or looked at Kenny and told me he made a bad play, boom, right in the tank, gone for 2 days. So you told Kenny he was great. Well, by the way, Kenny was great, all-time leading assist at Villanova. But Coach never said anything good about Chuck Everson or Mark Plansky in practice, not a one. And then,
Well, my last one when I was ready to leave.
until you graduate, and then. But the thing about Coach Massimino, my freshman year was a thrilling year, and it was great playing with Eddie Pinkney, who we just had here, backing up Dwayne McClain and Harold Presley, 2 pros. My sophomore year, it was kind of a transition. I start my sophomore year, and I just was nervous. You just didn't want to let anyone down the team. And Chuck and I have a teammate named Conley Brown who gave a coin.
Yeah.
So
I have it.
You've seen it, right? So that's our challenge coin. So it's comes from the World War II tradition of the troops of like teammates, a big locker room. So on the front is the ring, and on the back is Coach Mass's bust. And we were all asked to put your favorite Coach Massimino saying,
Right.
and the favorite saying would be on there. Well, the freshman saying is on our challenge coin, and it says, "Don't be a do-nothing strap."
Don't do nothing. Yeah, I
Right?
heard him say
and
that many times.
And you're like,
We all carry them.
Plansky, I played you 24 minutes last night. You had 6 points, 1 rebound. 1 rebound. That's one more than my grandmother. She's been dead for 10 years. Stop being a do-nothing. I'd much rather have you miss 10 shots than take no shots. And it was like, wow. And by my senior year with Coach Mass, I'm sure it was the same with you, the Italian culture that you just talked about takes over. You're in his office is his living room, right? His living room is his office. And I was in his office every day as a senior, co-captain of the team, more than Jay Wright, his first year at Villanova as an assistant. I was literally in the office more than Coach Wright because he wanted me in the office. He'd bring me in, like, what do you think about this guy, Brust? How are we going to cover him? I don't know, but I don't want to cover him. He's too hard. What do you think about this guy? What do you think about that guy? And it was just a true family relationship. And, we miss them. They can't be replaced.
They can't.
All right, great sayings. I know Louis got some great ones. Do you remember some of Louis' sayings?
It would be sacrilege if I didn't remember, and there would be a lightning bolt coming from somewhere if I did. There are so many things. When we would come back for reunions and things like that at the Garden, and Coach would show up, and always so generous, but always so honest. And, as we move on in age and, we're the gray hair club for men here, and no longer basketball players, he would go up to guys and grab them by the gut. And you couldn't help but laugh. The guys would get pissed, but they just couldn't respond. And he would say, "Holy S, you're going to catch a heart attack." So everyone's looking at each other, "Catch a heart attack?" I said, "Just go with it." Just go with it. There were so many others. And Chuck, you shared this with me, and Coach always said this when he was at home, pretty much homebound, go visit. And I had the same experience that you did. You did a great show with Coach.
Yeah,
from
the kitchen.
Yeah, from the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I walked in and I said, you got one of those living rooms, Coach. You got like the plastic on the couches and all that stuff. I said, are we ever going to sit in there? And he said, "Don't be a wise guy." And he said, "You're lucky you're in my kitchen." And I said, why is that? I said, "Because that's where the coffee is." He says, "No." He said, "Always remember this, son." He said, "Friends in the living room, family in the kitchen."
Yep. He
And
said that to us in the podcast.
Yeah,
I was like,
he's consistent. He was consistent. There was one last one that is probably more private. Now that he's kind of moved on, I'd probably be upset if I said it. But it was just dealing with life's adversities and life and death and things like that. And I remember when Al Labalbo had passed, and Al was a terrific coach. I mean, he worked with Krzyzewski. He worked with Bobby Knight, taught them defense.
my high school coach was a disciple of Al Laballo.
Al knew everything, and defensively, that is. So he passes on, and see the news. Not much on him. He wasn't that out front of a coach. And I called Con a second, and I said, "Coach," I said, "I'm really, really sorry about Coach Labalbo. I wish I would have known. What are the arrangements?" And he said, "Well, it passed," and it gets real quiet. So I'm thinking, okay, he's filling up. I don't want to talk too much about this and get him upset. And I said, "Coach, are you there?" And he says, and he starts whispering, as if we're being bugged. He says, "Holy smokes, I just hope they didn't bury him in those alligator shoes he wore." Al would have the blue pants, the blue alligator shoes, and an interesting hairstyle. So
And the hair.
So
Yeah.
I just said to him, I said, "You are just a sick person, hysterical."
The one saying that I remember hearing last time we talked to Ron Stewart actually was, "One day headline nudes, next day a fish wrapper."
Oh, he had a number
Yeah,
of
stuff like that all the time.
He'd say peacock
It took me a
today,
couple minutes. I
feather
started
duster
thinking Luca
tomorrow.
Brasi, right? But I was like, wait a second, right? I get what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you about expressions. It was kind of funny because the 30th anniversary. So it's 10 years now, Mark. I can't believe that. First of all, 10 years ago, I think it was Coach's 80th birthday, and so we were going to get him a gift. We were all getting together for the 30th anniversary at Villanova, and Mrs. Mass came up with the idea of having something with all of his sayings on it, and we had a big picture frame with all of his sayings and a picture of him screaming at everybody in the middle of it. And Harold Jensen and I presented it to him, and we all got our own version of that, like a small 8 by 11 or whatever. And we had all of his expressions, and it was great, right? Because we went through, everybody on the team was going through, what's your favorite? What's your favorite? And we went through this whole thing. So give him a couple that we can say here, Mark.
Get on the line.
Get on the line.
Didn't like that one at all.
I just got chills, Mark.
Didn't like that one at all.
I just got chills.
Get on the line.
I just got a knee injury, actually.
He would say stuff like, we would run the play, and then it would fall apart, and he would say something like, the operation was a success, but the guy died. So it's no good.
You have to remember, Coach Massimino invented the skip pass.
Right.
That's what he told us.
That's what he told us.
So
yeah.
you're talking, you're talking with that type of high level of basketball IQ, and the man invented the skip pass. So there was a lot of time zone. No, but another Italian that Matt referenced, epic coach of the Big East back in the 80s, PJ Carlesimo.
PJ.
Trivia, do you know when he grew his beard, which he still has today?
Uh-oh.
Summer of 1987, when Matt Brust and Mark Plansky played for the Big East All-Star team, and we went down to Australia.
Oh, wow. It's a long trip.
We practiced at Seton Hall. He started growing the beard and has had it ever since. So while there for 3 weeks, we tried to grow beards at 20 and 21 years old. Didn't go well. And basically, Matt and I, we were supposed to rotate. We had some great guys on the team. Cliff Robinson from UConn was on the team. Charlie Smith, the point guard from Georgetown, was our point guard. And
Matt Rowe.
Matt Rowe.
Matt from Syracuse.
Matty Rowe.
So we got to give a Syracuse a little.
Right. I got a little reference. That's
so
good.
PJ says, well, we're going to rotate every city we play in. We're going to rotate roommates so you guys spend time with everybody. So Matt and I are roommates the first city, and we never changed.
You said, you go ahead and rotate. We're fine.
We're good.
Basically, as Matt said earlier, PJ on day 2 or 3, once we're in country, said, look, boys, just show up. I don't care what you do after the games. Just show up. Now, PJ was single back then, so whatever we did after the games, PJ was doing after the games too.
Wow.
I got you.
To
Those
this
trips
day,
were great.
To this day, we have a tremendous relationship with PJ, and it's just busting chops, right? The verbal busting chops.
Right.
It was nonstop, right? It was nonstop with Coach Massimino until someone insulted one of his guys, right? And then look out, whoever made that insult.
That dynamic changed, though, after we were not playing with for him anymore. It was like we were employees for 4 years, and then all of a sudden now it was a different relationship. He was more of a mentor and more of a brother, more of a father figure.
You got into management?
I got into management, and I was able to have conversations with him that were pretty, especially when it comes to chop breaking,
But chop breaking, I've been dating this girl from Seattle for 3 years now, and her best friend is PJ's wife. They both had boys, same exact age.
I'm still trying to figure that one out.
PJ coached the boys in 8th grade like an NBA practice, wasn't rated G, PG, or R language-wise. You understand?
I got you. Yeah.
I met her on a blind date, and I'm like, well, tell me about some of your friends. Well, my best friend's Carolyn Carlesimo. I went, hold please.
This can't be happening.
So I text PJ, Casey McNall, question mark. 90 seconds later, he texts us back, can do a lot better than you.
He loves you, see?
Yeah.
Casey says, wait, I just met her 10 minutes into meeting her. Texas PJ. Mark Plansky, question mark. You can do a lot better. But so that's Louis, that's Rolly, and that's PJ.
And that's how it
we're
was
just
back
privileged. We were just privileged, 40 years later for all of us to have these memories because it was genuine. And, it's like your family, right? It's family.
Yep.
It's family.
In those days, if I just add this, when they had those Big East tournament All-Star summer gigs, and we had a great one, again, going to Australia, we had an 8-game series against their Olympic team, all around the country. And we don't remember much of it, but we think we split. But, in those days, I remember going to Seton Hall, and I'm being driven by my mother, and I'm telling her, I said, I don't know about this. And she goes, what's the problem? That you're going to Australia, you're going to see the world, all this nonsense. And I said, yeah, but I hate these guys.
Right.
I said, it's the Big East. I said, I hate these guys, and I'm pretty sure that they would gang up on me because I've done some pretty crappy things to some of these guys. So I'm not sure if I should walk in the gym. But that's how it was. That was the fierce rivalries that we had and the will to win. And you know, Mark
There's a reason why I didn't mention Mad Row.
Right.
Let's just put it that way, Sonny.
I mean,
you go.
Mark was, you know.
But this is Dave Gavitt's vision for the league. What you're describing,
Right.
between
100%.
the coaches and the players, like what you felt going to Seton Hall, that's exactly Dave Gavitt's vision, was to put you with Mark Plansky, or put you, you know.
Yep.
That was his vision. He did it with the coaches, which are, you think about the personalities of the coaches that we have.
Oh.
I mean, Massimino, Carnesecca, Boeheim, Thompson, soon to be Calhoun, and PJ. I mean, those guys, those are like legendary, like landmark coaches, Mount Rushmore worthy. We had those guys in the league.
Besides being incredible coaches, these guys were men that raised boys to be men. And everyone that you've had here, and congrats on the success of the show, all the guys that you've had all pay homage to those men because they taught us how to contend with adversity, how to come back. We get blown out on a Thursday night up at Syracuse. We got to play Saturday against Georgetown. And Friday, it's on the back page of the Daily News and every New York newspaper, St. John's blown out, you know, Brust tanks the game, whatever it said. But we had to learn and fight that stuff.
Yep.
And every single one of these guys, at least that I know, and I have tremendous gratitude for having a relationship with this guy, you know, all successes in their own right. And it's not merit, it's not based on monetary value. It's just what they give of themselves, how they give it. Ed Pickney you had on. That guy has not changed since he used to come to St. John's in the summer in our little auxiliary gym and fight. So, you know, those men were just incredible mentors, teachers, and I really feel bad for the current and crop of players that come through. They don't seem, you know, there are some coaches out there that linger, but they're losing so much of this sidewalk culture.
You mentioned it earlier. Coach Carnesecca made sure you knew the guys that played at St. John's in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and everyone after you knows who Matt Brust is from the 80s.
Right.
Jay Wright did a phenomenal job. You know, or remember, we played for those that came before us. And so he connected the 50s, Bill Melchione, the 60s, Chris Ford, you know, everybody to present day to 2022, you know, when Jay left. And both our programs are super fortunate. Can't talk about Syracuse, you know, in public because we don't do that.
It's okay.
But we're super fortunate to have the ability to tap in to somebody that you watch play, may never know, and immediately it's like, yeah, hey man, how you doing? Tell me about your family. You know, not tell me what your thoughts are of this year's team.
Right.
Tell me about your family.
So the DePaul game last night, we're sitting behind Terry Cummings, Quentin Richardson. They win, right? And they have not enjoyed a lot of success to date here in the Big East. Coach, after he did his interviews, came right over, spoke to Terry Cummings, spoke to Quentin. So you could see that this coach has the right frame of mind and has the right vision. I mean, if you've got guys that came before you, talk about players, how about coaches that came before you? And if they had success, and if you can do that authentically, why not?
Absolutely.
And you know, it's really cool because Mark and I, and a lot of the guys too, but Mark and I in particular, if I was in town and he happened to be in town, we'd go to practice together. We'd walk in the door. A manager would hand us a bottle of water. Another guy would get us a chair. We're sitting on the court with the guys, right? Now Jalen is running down the court. He may give you a little shove just to say, hey, what's up? You know, it was cool. That went on for about 10 years or so, right, Mark? We'd go to like 3 or 4 practices a year, and it was great. And you got to know these guys, you know.
We were lucky. Matt and I have talked about this a few times. You know, after our career, Jay Wright was first-year assistant my senior year. So connected for another 20 years, 25 years to the program. So totally fortunate that we had this 20-year magical run following Jay Wright, and then the success that he had, from basically 15 to the end. Whereas St. John's, is getting all the hype now with Coach Pitino and winning the Big East and top 10 in the country. But as he said, they were pretty darn good 40 years ago,
Yeah.
the last time they were significant. But there was a gap, and it's frustrating. Matt, we've talked about it, that he looks at what Villanova's gap has been filled with Jay Wright. And look, let's just face it, I tell everybody, Jay Wright would have to be the best actor in the world to fake his genuine ability and character as well as he does. That's just who he is.
Yep.
And that's how he ran the program.
Yep.
When he said, I want to connect the past, he connected the past. And this guy, as you know, is the gatekeeper. He's made it work.
Well, I think for me, I mean, we had Coach Boeheim for 46 years at Syracuse.
Quite a run.
So, right? And it's just unheard of. And he's graduated there, stayed on, graduate assistant coach, never left. So his tenure was probably closer to 60 years, You're just never going to see
Amazing.
that.
Never.
And Coach Carnesecca was a lifer. Now, he went to the Nets and came back to the beloved St. John's, but
Yep.
he wasn't going anywhere. Those guys, I don't know if we're ever going to see that kind of longevity again. And we were blessed to have that. And we have the ability now to follow a little bit of Chuck's secret sauce and connect some of our Syracuse guys together, right?
But you talk about Coach Carnesecca and how loyalty and honesty and gratitude was built. I personally enjoyed going on the road into the coach's office. The guys were kind of in their room, fooling around, doing whatever we were doing. But I just used to like to go down and hear their stories, because Coach would talk about growing up in Brooklyn, all these things that his mother and father did, and they'd always try to chase me out, but I just wouldn't leave. But I remember him talking about how he got his first contract. He was coaching under the famous Joe Lapchick, and he said, "You know how he negotiated my contract?" He sat down, he put his hand out, shook my hand. He said, "You're on, kid." That's how they negotiated his contract.
That's great.
And everyone since, and that's where Coach made it his business to say, "You see that guy over there? That's John Farmer. He played when you were in diapers." And don't ask me how old I am. And this was Tom Wiedock, and this was all these guys, who've kind of faded into the background, as we all do. But there was an intense gratitude. There was an intense pride that you had wearing your uniform, because there were better men than you played in those uniforms before,
Right.
And we were privileged to be offered that position.
Bigger than any one of us, right?
That's right.
So, well, listen, guys, we're getting close to the end. I got one last question for you. We're here celebrating the Big East Conference. We're here celebrating Starter. What is your starter jacket story?
Well, first of all, being from Boston, Sonny, it's pronounced Stada jacket.
Right.
The starter.
And we all know that the Stada jacket's a wicked piss of good.
Yeah.
So, real quick, my first ever starter jacket
Don't
was
tell me Red Sox, please. Don't do
Celtics.
that to me.
Oh, okay. That's
Celtics
acceptable.
could
I
do it.
mean, the green is green, right? You remember those jackets?
Larry Bird.
But my favorite was the starter jacket we got when we won. Starter gave Villanova national championship jacket, which I still have. My daughter, fits my daughter, not me, but that's by far my favorite starter jacket
Wyatt
of all
Maker's
time.
wife wore it to the 40th anniversary
Yeah,
with the
I mean,
Villanova 85 champs on the side.
That was what these guys do. Eddie and Randy were talking about it, and you mentioned it, Sonny. It supersedes just basketball. It's culture, and that jacket is something special.
So other than today, Matt, what was your
Boy, you
starter?
took my line.
Your starter jacket story.
My first starter jacket story was I was playing in an all-star game in high school in my senior year, and my starter jacket story really is Shelton Jones walks in with a St. John's starter jacket on, and he goes, "I'm going to St. John's." That was my starter jacket story. I went to St. John's. I'm still waiting for mine. I took this off of Carl Banks' back
Right.
for the show because it sold out because St. John's is doing so great. I think I'm going to keep this.
Yeah, it looks good on
They
you. I
chased
got to
me
say
down
that. It
34th
looks
Street,
good
but
on you.
I'm,
Hold on. Him versus Carl Banks. Who you got?
Well, you know what? You know what?
That's a pick 'em.
Yeah,
That's
don't
a
put me
pick 'em.
on
That's a
that
pick 'em.
spot,
That's the
man.
spread.
That's who's
I mean,
paying
listen,
for the show. That's the
I know
pick.
how crazy Matt is. You know,
I know.
he has a puncher's chance. I'll say that. I'll say that. So, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Mark Plansky from Villanova, the '85 championship team. Matt Brust, the great St. John's player. Thank you very, very much for hanging with us here at Macy's Herald Square, celebrating the starter jacket drop.
Oh, thank you guys. Appreciate
guys.
everything you do. Show
It
was awesome.
terrific.
Love you guys, man.
Congratulations on the show, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
The Big East Rewind was produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus and Daryl Gurney. Also on our camera, all our technical stuff that we did at Macy's Herald Square was produced by Billy Papamanuel. We thank Billy for all his hard work and what he did to help us with a different experience for Sonny and I. And of course, check us out on the SiriusXM app. Check us out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. Thanks a lot for joining us, everybody. Have a great night.
Click like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Have a good one, folks. Appreciate you all.